Good morning, spiders. Let's see. Cavity is still here. Ah, yes, I heard that Evie and Snow had progressed somewhat on the redecoration, shall we say, of the grand hall. Yes, it's coming along marvelously compared to the drab place it was before. This is, I must say, an improvement. Some spots here and there that need finishing, but oh well, it's coming along marvelously. In fact, I did get some work done on the upstairs part of the castle while you were gone. I'm afraid it might be daytime. No matter, that's what umbrellas are for. Yes, you see, so I began putting in new flooring, started repaneling the walls, fixed up this facade, and this corner is no longer missing, which is a great improvement, I would say. Also, some of the vines are gone. I cut down the trees. This arcade is now once again complete as it was before. And something I'm sure Evie will appreciate, there is once again water flowing through the fountain. Yes, it's starting to feel lived in again, shall we say. Feeling as though it's once again someone's home. Then again, still quite a lot to be done. Won't be finished quite so soon, but we're progressing wonderfully. In fact, instead of working on the castle today, I think it was rather time I had a little talk with that Kazar, that second of Asher, and see what his mind in all of this is, because we've scarcely had the chance to speak to each other. Yes, I think I'll do just that. Very well then. Let's see. Castle. Not that, no. No. This really is rather clogged. No. What? Guard Capital. Council again. Library. Did it? And on this of all days. Hold on, let me see whether my waystone does any better. Very well, then I'll walk. It's only a short while from the castle anyway. You know, when the war was going on, I'd often go around by carriage, because flying around as a bat during a war with vampires was a surefire way to get shot down by hunters. Something I learned to avoid very quickly. Here we are. The edges of the capital. Yes, that's what I've come to expect from this place. Heretics abound. Yes. Here we are. That'll help us get around a bit easier. Ah, the capital. Oh, if only you could have seen it in my day. Well, I'm fine. It's really rather fallen apart, though. Still something to be proud of. Let's see, if I remember correctly, the house was over this way. Ah, just who I needed. Doesn't seem to have taken up Asher's methods of fighting. Seems to be rather more running away at the moment. I thought you might need a helping hand.
Yeah. Could help it get through faster. Oh my god, thank god, finally. Thank you.
My pleasure. So,
If you're looking for Asher, he's out right now.
well, not so much actually. I was rather hoping to talk to you. We haven't had the chance very much yet.
Yeah, I think Asher might flip his top if I talk to you.
Is he so against it?
He's against most things. Well, you can follow me. I'm not saying no to a conversation.
Of course.
It actually might be. It might be good to talk anyway.
Yes. Well, I'm sure there are some questions you might have about the vampire, the government, and how it used to function back in my day.
That and you were around when that treaty was signed, right?
I'm afraid that happened while I was rather unfortunately dead temporarily, but I've certainly read it.
And there's gotta be a way we can,
Is this it?
Asher is so against Asher's so against a meeting. There's gotta be something, to rewrite it, But I brought the idea up to Asher, and Asher was so against it.
Yes, I had a feeling that so long as Asher continues to be in charge, it's not very likely there will be any sort of amendment to the treaty.
Even if we try talking to people, council members.
Well, the trouble is, when the other factions try to imagine an idea of what the other vampires might be like, their first point of reference is the prince, so they assume the vampire faction is just a whole squadron of ashes running around, which is not a very good impression, it must be said.
So they believe this is the only way, hunters and vampires, that things can even be an ounce of peaceful. Because Asher's running things, they're scared?
I'm not so sure whether it is they're scared, though I wouldn't blame them if they were. It's rather that this is the way things have come to be settled, and to change them would be to go against the person who wrote the treaty in the first place, which would be Asher and a number of other parties, of course, but mainly Asher, being one of the few surviving authors.
I mean, that was over a century ago, and the rest of the people don't live as long as we do, so surely it can change, it can be rewritten.
Well, the longer it's remained unchanged, the more reason there is not to change it. After all, they'll only see its century of existence as proof that it works the way it does.
But it doesn't work if people keep dying.
Well, no one would say that the treaty is perfect, but then again, to change it, how many people would die then?
Change is a part of life. It needs to happen. I mean, was it always this bad?
Well,
I've heard stories.
In the days when we didn't have the treaty, when we instead had the court system, and Chiron was in charge, and before that my sire was in charge, things were a lot more free, shall we say, at least for vampires.
And what was your old sire like? Worse than Chiron?
Well, my old sire, the late queen of the vampires, was someone who often chose the diplomatic path, shall we say. Someone who loved to make peace with other factions and, to be honest, weakened the position of the vampires deliberately, and well, eventually that cost her her life.
Chiron?
Yes, precisely. He killed her and then took power for himself, as it often goes along the rules of vampire government.
And that's just how things are?
That's how they've been for about as long as I've been alive. Yes, at least before the treaty. Did Asher
Why are we so deep?
Did Asher never teach you very much about the old government ways?
No.
Oh.
Not much.
That seems quite the oversight.
Can you tell me?
Well, the vampires function very much in a eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth sort of way.
Yeah, I've come to figure that out a little bit.
Are you familiar with the phrase, idleness is the birth of cruelty?
No. But I see what you mean.
Yes, when you're as alive for as long as we are, then you've got quite a few centuries to try and entertain yourself, and that becomes rather difficult after a while, with all subsequent results.
And what's entertainment to you?
Well, let me put it this way. As a human, I was the leader of a small village on the Rothmore estate. I was a baron, not very high-ranking one. But then, once I became a vampire, I've already been a personal advisor to 3 different vampire monarchs, and I was raised from the rank of baron to viscount, all of which I could have never achieved with the length of one mere mortal human life. So I suppose to me it is ambition, and the feeding of it.
I see.
You've only been a vampire for a handful of years yourself, have you not?
Only 5.
Oh, to be 5 years again.
Yeah?
Why, that's been well over 500 years for me.
Are you tired?
No, I continue to find my little tasks and purposes here and there.
Do you think your idleness has led you to be evil?
Well, evil is so very relative. I mean, so much of this interfaction squabbling could be solved if everyone was simply a vampire, wouldn't you agree?
No. To you, is that the perfect world you see? Everyone a vampire?
Well, it would certainly give people a lot less reason to go about shouting war and the like.
Is this a mindset you and Asher share, or
Oh no.
is this?
Believe me, the prince and I are 2 very different men. He believes in the sword and I believe in the pen. He believes in... Well, at least he used to believe in violent action. I'm not sure how well I even know the prince anymore.
He likes... Well, you know what he likes, I'm sure.
I can imagine, from what I remember.
But why is that a world you would want to create? Everyone becoming a vampire, I mean.
We would break down so many barriers, erase so many of the differences that separate us.
I mean, aren't differences good?
I've seen differences lead to war more than once.
Is this a mindset you grew into, learning, based on people that came before you?
Well, I suppose my father especially had a lot to do with it. The late Lord Rothmore, he always taught me to fight for the betterment of the Rothmore family, and I suppose I've come to expand that to the entirety of the vampire faction the longer I've lived.
If you could live in a world where people got along and there wasn't any more death, wouldn't you want to live in that one instead? Instead of forcing everyone to change?
Would you?
Doesn't everyone? I mean, yeah, there's always going to be conflicts, but it doesn't need to be violent.
Well, I'm afraid once you've had so many centuries to build up your frustrations, conflict will always be inevitable.
Well, of course, that's just the part of life, you know?
Precisely, and that's why I believe that Asher's treaty will not hold, and will not be changed even if it could mean holding off conflict, which I doubt it ever could.
And you believe that why? It seems you and Asher share the same mindset when it comes to that. I feel like I'm on my own team here.
Well, I suppose Asher and I are both the product of having served on Chiron's court for however many centuries it was.
I think I did a number on you, huh? What did he do to Asher?
I'm not sure to it. By my understanding, by the time the future prince was introduced to the court system and to the other vampire nobles such as myself, he had been turned quite a while ago, and I'm not sure what happened in that intervening time. He certainly never spoke much about it, to me at least. Or to anyone.
Yeah. Did your queen ever punish you? Lock you in a sunroom?
No, not really, though in hindsight perhaps it would have made me the stronger, more self-reliant vampire had she done so much earlier.
Why would you want that?
In our world, it simply helps to be tough, shall we say.
Yeah, but you can be tough without having to go through all of that. Can't you?
Well, I would say my sire was a subscriber to that mindset, and well, her reign was a short one as a result. Abruptly ended.
Was she able to do anything? I mean, to better anything at all? Or was everyone against her? Because she was different?
Well, we lost great numbers of vampires due to hunters that she wasn't willing to come into conflict with, and we lost quite a bit of old vampire territory, which again she wasn't willing to fight for. All she did was lose, and eventually she lost her life as well. Because she wasn't willing to stand up and fight.
Oh, fuck. So, I'm at a loss here.
Not what you had expected, perhaps?
I thought maybe changing Asher's mentality somehow by somehow getting this treaty rewritten would do something, but it's just a book.
Well, changing Asher...
It is just a book.
Oh, it's so much more than that. It's an agreement between all factions. It's the...
But nobody listens to this. This is just words on paper that mean nothing if everything is so deep-rooted. I thought Asher was just the problem, but if Asher is just a product of a product of a product of some other sick vampire's twisted game, then this means nothing! There's nothing that I can do!
That's not exactly true. You could build your way up, become a first-class second to him, and perhaps then one day you might replace him and do things your way. But until then, you have no such power.
But even if I did that, some other vampire would come along probably, unhappy with how I do things.
Yes, that does seem to be the song and dance of history.
I just can't imagine doing that.
There was one man capable of changing Asher, and well, he didn't exactly change it for the better, and Asher ended up taking his life, so it's not something I would dare to attempt again. If there's one thing I've learned from these centuries, it's the safest thing for yourself is simply to play along in the game and simply do your best.
You know, that's what Asher said. It's what he does. Inaction is still action, though.
Very true, very true.
Sometimes I feel like I am the only vampire who thinks the same way I do.
I think many fledgling vampires during their first few years of vampirehood like to hold on to their human optimism, shall we say, things like hope and belief in change, but as the centuries go along, well, it's not so much that you become more vampire, it's rather you lose part of your human self, whereas another deeper rooted part of your human self takes over. And the part that seeks only survival, no matter the cost.
That's what makes a vampire?
Well, it's something I've heard people debate on for centuries, and I couldn't give you a complete answer myself, but it would be part of it.
What do you think makes a vampire? makes him.
Well, in the obvious sense, sort of red eyes, pale skin, sharp teeth, a disdain for garlic. Other than
What
that,
about changes?
I know plenty of humans who aren't too fond of change either.
Yeah. I mean, humans can be violent, just like vampires can.
Precisely. So why would they judge us for being mindless killers when humans slaughter animals every day because they think of them as lesser beings than them? I think I ought to put that back in its place before the prince should return.
I'm scared of them.
I don't want to anger the prince too much, lest it endanger me somehow.
You survived the 3 vampire courts, right?
I did indeed.
And how did you manage doing that?
Well, really it's a combination of things. First of all, there was my diplomatic skill, my ability to convince Chiron that I did have certain uses and that I had little loyalty to the old queen, despite the fact that she was my sire, and had indeed assisted in the what would eventually become the takeover of Chiron. Plus, there was the fact that the Rothmore estate makes up a not completely tiny piece of vampire territory. I made myself
Don't you regret it?
useful.
If she was kind to you, don't you regret it?
Do you think Asher was kind to you for turning you?
Maybe then I would have been grateful. But if I had known this is what I would get out of it, I think I'd have preferred to die.
To each their own, I suppose.
You were grateful? How did you turn? Or were you just born into it?
Well, my parents were both killed in a vampire attack, and rather than seek revenge, I realized I was the last of the Rothmores to be left alive, so in order to continue and make sure that the bloodline would be preserved until well into the future, I asked the Queen to turn me in exchange for my eternal service to her.
And she did.
She did indeed. And I've yet to regret it.
And did Chiron or anyone else do anything to you?
I suppose Chiron never took as much of an interest in me as he did in Asher, because, well, such is the privilege of a fledgling and their sire. He gave me my little assignments, and I did them as best as I could, never really angering him much in the process.
You said a connection between a vampire and their sire.
Oh yes, there certainly is. Don't you ever get that sort of deep-set tingling feeling whenever Asher is near?
You mean anxiety?
Well, I suppose it might also be a bit of a result as the relationship between you two, but naturally, vampires who are siren fledgling should be able to sense each other when near.
You mean I just have a engraved walking tracker on me?
Yes, that about describes it indeed, yes.
I can't win against him, can I? Unless I kill him.
Yes, I suppose you could kill him, but then again, he is a vampire nearly as old as myself, and very experienced fighter. Taking him down would be quite the challenge indeed.
I don't want to be like them.
Yes,
I don't want to be...
Being like the prince is a fate I wouldn't wish upon my worst enemy.
I don't want to be like the prince. I don't want to be like Chiron. I don't want to be like the million other leaders that came before that resulted in this.
Well, at the very least, it has allowed it to continue to exist until this point, so not all of it could be wrong.
It seems like vampires are allergic to change, or at least the very idea of it.
Oh, change does happen.
So unless...
But it's very, very slow indeed.
Other people don't live as long as we do. Avians, Murs, hunters, humans.
Yes,
They don't live like we do.
I do not envy their short lives.
What would you do if you were in my shoes?
If I was you, I would simply nod whenever the prince asked me a question, do everything he says, commit to my training, etc., whatever the prince would command me. So long as it keeps me in good graces with him.
So I should just be a dog?
Well, I think the position of being the second in command to the vampire monarch is a little bit more glorified than simply being a dog, but...
And what exactly do you think I get being a second in command? Because right now, all I have done is walk on all fours in the dirt. I have no power here.
Well, you have your house, don't you?
I live in a shack.
You mean the one over there?
No, I live in this. He took my house from me.
Ah, but why did he take your house from you?
Because that's all he does, Eloise.
Were you perhaps a little disobedient as to his orders?
I didn't agree with his orders. I didn't agree with the fact that he locked me in a room for hours, not even thinking I would survive. He let me burn in the sun for hours. That does something to someone. And then he moved me in here.
Well, there's far worse things that could happen to a vampire. I'm sure you've noticed the number of heretics about.
Are vampires always this cruel? Leaders, kings, princes, queens, whatever title they decide at the time.
Well, it does seem like the more cruel ones do end up coming out on top, though not usually for very long.
Who's ruled the longest?
Difficult to say. There are so very many monarchs that have come before me. I'm sure I have a book on the history of the vampire monarch somewhere, but I'd say the average one lasts for about 1 or 2 centuries.
Almost been about 2 centuries for Asher, no?
Yes, that would be correct.
How long was your queen's?
Not sure how long she reigned before she turned me, but after I was turned, her reign only lasted a few decades more, I would say.
So vampires are ruled only by the strongest. And the strongest
The pecking
is just
order.
a killer.
Yes, the pecking order of who is the strongest tends to change relatively quickly.
I don't suppose you know anything about a vampire who slightly thought the way I do?
I suppose quite a few vampires think the way you do when they're freshly turned, but it doesn't last very long. It becomes much easier to survive once you realize the way things work for vampires.
And you think if I keep thinking like this, I'll die?
Well, I doubt Asher's punishments will become any more lenient, shall we say?
Yeah. Maybe you're right. Maybe the only way I can change things is biding my time.
Precisely.
Are you happy?
Well, given that I've recently been brought back from the dead, I'd say I'm over the moon, really.
But I mean, if this is what you wake up to, are you really happy? Or is just that the price of immortality and you're willing to put up with it?
No, I've come to learn to revel in what it is I do and what my vampire nature has given me. I certainly don't miss being a human.
Yeah. Have you ever turned anyone?
Well, I do believe we did discuss Io a while ago, though that was already over 2 centuries ago, I think. And
Why? Why'd you turn him?
well, that brings us back to that old nemesis Chiron, because he wanted a siren vampire to be able to experiment with and perhaps use in the war that was still going on then, and I simply obliged with whatever siren we had available at the time, which was Io.
So Io was just a weapon.
That was their intended purpose, yes, but given time, they might have risen the ranks of vampire society, become a noble for themselves, and who knows where Io would be instead by now, instead of being locked up in some birdcage.
Is Io the only one?
Yes, surprisingly, in the 6 centuries, the only one.
What's the cruelest thing that's ever happened to you? Being under vampire control, vampire treaty?
I suppose being forced to convert the basements of my beloved family castle into a prison was not something I would have otherwise agreed to, and that was simply part of biting my tongue, as you put it.
So you've never had a sunroom or any punishments like Asher gave? Or anything like Chiron gave Asher?
Luckily, I can only imagine what the sunroom must be like.
Yeah. I guess if you don't roll over, you get that.
Yes, that does seem to be the case.
How do you... I just can't see how you can deal with that. How do you go along with everything?
Well, I must say, things used to be rather a bit more interesting in the days of the court system, when we still had regular parties and balls where all of the vampires of the court gathered. Speaking of which, I've been in the process of rebuilding Rothmore Castle recently from its ruined state, and myself and a few other vampires are organising a bit of a gala to take place there. And of course, you'd be, if the prince permits it, more than welcome to attend. It surely would do you good to meet some of your fellow vampires.
And this party, ball, is it just filled with more vampires that think the way Asher does, or you do?
Yes, it will be vampire only, I believe, though I think Snow might want to make an exception for Veers, since they live in vampire territory anyway, but other than that, Yes, vampires only.
Yeah. I'd like to go.
No, splendid, splendid.
Do other vampires know about what goes on between me and Asher? What he's done?
I certainly haven't picked up much about it, and I would be the first to hear it. Holding on to information was sort of one of my primary purposes when both of the previous vampire monarchs were around.
Snow was the right hand before me, yeah?
Indeed, yes.
Was she like me?
Snow was, well, from what I could tell, she's always been a very ruthless killer, perhaps even more so than Asher himself. Which of course had its own uses during the war and getting things done for Asher with regards to Charon.
Yeah. I guess that's what I expected. Do I look like him?
Physically? Well, I suppose you could be more like him. You could have the little crown and the absolutely tasteless fashion sense, but well, given you did stop dyeing your hair red, didn't you?
Yeah. Not allowed to dye it back.
Yes, well, some likeness, I suppose, is undeniable for all vampires.
Yeah. Maybe I'd enjoy being a vampire more if I wasn't stuck here.
I do hope you will enjoy it, because there are so many benefits to be had.
Like parties, never ending.
Yes, for example.
And where do you get the most pleasure out of being a vampire?
I suppose it's the knowledge that I will always be around for it. As long as I play it safe, I don't upset anyone, especially not hunters, then I should be here to witness the world for, in theory, all eternity.
Do you have a family?
I once had quite a lot of family, 5 siblings. They all died when they were still human.
You haven't made any friends? Anyone you'd consider family since starting?
Well, friends, many, I suppose, but I wouldn't go so far as to say family.
I mean, are they friends or are they just connections to ensure you won't die?
Yes, well, that is a very good question. I suppose true friends I have only a handful of. But that is just enough for me.
And who might those be?
Well, for a start, there's Evie, who's currently staying with me in Rotsmore Castle and helping me rebuild. There's Fears, whom I've known for pretty much their entire life, which is about half my own.
And what are they like? Are they like Asher? You?
Oh no, if they're far better company than Asher. If they weren't, I wouldn't call them my friends. No, I would take the sunroom over an evening's worth of conversation with the prince.
Oh, it's not that bad. Just a few kind words here and there. Unkind.
Yes, it's exactly that which I have trouble with, being kind to the prince.
Where does your hate come from?
Well, I suppose when the change of rulership happened, I became less important and Asher got more of the spotlights, which meant that my services weren't needed as much anymore, and I fell into obscurity just a little, but... And on top of that, we're just two very different thinking people. Or at least were, because he always used to go on about violence and battle plans, whereas I would write clever little diplomatic envoys to get people to give me what I need willingly, rather than having to pry it from their cold, dead hands.
When was the last time you felt fear? Like your heart sinking into your stomach, chills up your spine?
That would have to be the night that I died.
As a human?
No, as a vampire, being dragged from my carriage by hunters and stabbed repeatedly, left on the roadside to bleed to death. I still have the scars to prove it.
I'm sorry.
Well, I've had a few centuries to get over that memory, shall we say. But in the
Sorry for
moment,
bringing it up.
certainly was frightening.
Yeah, no. I've only interacted with a hunter a handful of times, so never been caught by one.
And they don't try to kill you because you're a vampire close to the prince?
I mean, in passing, yeah. Sometimes I would mess with them in my earlier days. Me and Pike. But, now I feel if I did come across a hunter, part of me would just not fight back.
I think your instincts would kick in before that could happen.
You mean the animalistic primal urge that vampires have to kill, because that's all we're programmed to do.
Well, that's certainly how hunters would describe us, but I wouldn't describe them very differently from that either.
Nothing's gonna change. Unless I somehow miraculously took his place.
We'll have to wait to see what the future brings for us.
Isn't there another way to... I don't want to kill him. But I don't know if he can change.
I don't think he can change either.
It's not fair. I mean... He's like this because of what he grew into, what Chiron did to him, and he's just been deep-rooted in that mindset for so long. I don't want to have to kill him.
Well, when it comes to change in the vampire government, I'm afraid killing is, to my knowledge, the only way that has ever existed.
Anything else I should know about vampire history?
Not that I could think of at the top of my head, but should you wish to ask me more, I'll send you the coordinates of Rothmore Castle, and you can always visit me there, as it is still within vampire territory, technically.
How far of a walk is it? I don't think I'll be getting my waystone back anytime soon.
Well, not very far at all. In fact, I walked here myself because my own warpstone was acting up.
Maybe I'll take you up on that.
And there is, of
Have
course,
to be when
the
he's not
garden to
around.
look forward to.
Oh.
I do hope you enjoy it.
Thanks. Do you... Might seem... You don't have to... Do you have an extra waystone on you?
I'm afraid not.
Right. No, that's okay. I'm sure if I sit and obey, nod my head, I'll get one soon.
I think it would be the smartest way to do it.
Yeah. Maybe I'll come visit you when he's not here. I think you can tell he's not the biggest fan of you.
Yes, I'm not surprised, to be honest. I see now why my warpstone was acting up.
Why
Yes.
is that?
Usually there's one here. But oh well.
Yeah. Thank you.
Of course, the pleasure is all mine. Glad we finally got
Was
to
there-
sit down and talk.
Yeah. Was there anything you Wanted to ask me, or is that why you came over initially for a little history lesson? Or was it an invite to the ball?
Oh, a bit of both, inviting you and teaching you some of the things that Asher should have been teaching you in a far more effective manner.
Yeah. I don't think he knows any other teaching methods, I'm gonna be honest.
No, it doesn't surprise me, given he's a product of Chiron.
Yeah.
But I think I've dwelt enough on about the past.
I'll see you at the ball, maybe?
Of course, I'll let you know when we have a date set.
Yeah. Maybe I can come meet Evie and Verse, or Verse? I don't know. How did you say their name? Fierce?
Well, I always say Fierce, and I would be surprised if I had been saying it wrong for 300 years.
You might want to get that checked.
Do you know that's a very good idea, actually, yes.
Might be a long time bit you didn't know was a thing.
Do you know, I wouldn't put it past them.
I'll see you around.
Of course. Take care. Well, that was a very interesting conversation. So the young Kaza does indeed hate the prince as much as I suspected. Then again, he's in no fit state to be any sort of opposition to the prince, so I suppose we'll have to leave it at that for just now, but until then I suppose I need to get some more rest. On top of that, I think there might be some more people I have to be sending letters to in the near future, but that's a concern for later. Until then, good night, spiders.